So I haven't put anything on YouTube for a while, and I decided that I need to do something about our bathroom. We have one main bathroom in the house. We have a half bath, but it's in a really inconvenient position. It's only got one sink, and we've got a little guy who's grown up, so I think it'd be better to move to 2 sinks. But in order to do that, I gotta do plumbing, I gotta do a little bit of wiring, and to be honest, I don't really have a clue what I'm doing. So I've built a few things, and a couple years ago, I basically bought out a wood shop from a guy who was going to be moving to sort of a retirement / nursing home facility that would progress up. And so I bought a table saw, a band saw, a jointer, a planer. I even bought his workbench, so that's what I'm using on there. It's got a nice vise on it, and moved that all into my shop. Along with that came a lot of rough cut poplar, and then a decent little amount of cherry, and then just sort of miscellaneous boards that I don't know what they are. Maybe some ash, I'm not sure. So in any case, this has been a little bit of a process. So because in the past, anytime I've built things, I've built them straight out of plywood or S4S stuff that I got at Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever. And so in this case, I'm going to use birch plywood for the cabinet, I think. And then I'm going to use some of the poplar that I've milled down using the jointer and the planer. Hopefully I've got that set up right. It was getting pretty well square results, at least what I think are square enough for my needs. Now the main thing is wrestling these big sheets of plywood. So what happened is I started to cut down my plywood, and we're going vertically here through the saw because I need several pieces that are the same width from that long section. So I started to push it through the saw, and as I did, my fence moved, which is not desirable. So what my measurement at the start was correct. By the end, it had veered off by about a 1/16 of an inch. So what I need to do is cut down the boards first and then run that through the saw again, so there's not as much weight, not as much pressure against that fence, that hopefully it won't be as likely to move at all as I push the wood through. So I'm just going to line up my circular saw and try to get that as straight as I can and as square as I can. I'm going to go ahead and try to be as precise as I possibly can, and we'll see what happens. So wish me luck. Okay, so the board that I'm working on here is the one that I was talking about that's wider on one end than another. Now, fortunately, that was wider than I actually needed. So I can basically make my cross cuts here. You can see I started out just over a pink board, and then I moved to the table after that. But I'm making these cross cuts for my side panels, and then I'm going to run those through the table saw longwise to get that actual rip width that I need.
I think that's gonna work.
All right, so it looks like my fence moved on me again, which I don't know, maybe 3/4 inch plywood is just too much for these old table saws and fences. I don't know. All right, so day 2, I got a little interrupted there the other day, but day 2 here, what I'm gonna do is cut the inner panels that separate the 2 sink areas, bays, whatever you call those, the 2 sink cabinet areas from the drawers that are going to be in the middle. So I'm gonna cut those. So now all I basically have to do is cut out the toe kick on the two side panels, and then I think I should be good. So after I get these things done, I'm gonna cut out, I'm calling them some stretchers that will kind of space things out, should square everything up, and then also serve as like nailers for the back wall. So I'm gonna start to cut those out, and then after that I'm gonna start on the face frame. So hopefully we'll be all good to go. Okay, so I forgot that I had the Craig Rip Cut. I bought this a few years ago. So instead of trying to grapple with the 4x8 sheets of plywood on the table saw, I'm going to try to just cut down what I need using the Rip Cut. I think I've got it lined up if I can remember how it works. Like I said, it's been a number of years.
As you can see here, I switched from using my level as a straight edge to using a framing square, and that actually worked pretty well, except for the fact that later on I realized that my framing square is not exactly square. It's just slightly off. So I'm telling you what, I can't get anything in my shop that is actually straight or square. But in any case, it was just slightly off and not enough to really mess anything up. After that, I moved on to measuring and cutting out the toe kick.
Alright, so I have a lot of my boards cut now, and I still have to cut a lot of things for the face frame, but for the actual cabinet itself, I think I just about have everything cut up. So here's all that stuff, all lined up and ready to roll. I'm going to start doing pocket holes in all of the various parts that will sort of keep everything aligned. That's how I'm going to connect everything. And hopefully, when this is all said and done, hopefully everything goes together okay and isn't a mess. I think what I'm gonna do before I go any further with drilling a lot of holes is try to do some kind of dry fit. I don't know how this is gonna work, but I'm gonna give that a whirl first and we'll see what happens from there.
I know it probably seems crazy if you're a cabinet maker or somebody who builds things like this all the time, but For some reason, I just didn't trust myself that I'd actually cut everything correctly. And so before I went through drilling a bunch of pocket holes, I wanted to make sure that at least for the base or the main part of the box, everything was okay and good to go, and that the squareness issue wasn't going to be a problem.
Okay, so I think I have a fairly successful test fit. Everything is cut right for the base part of it. Hopefully everything else will line up and we'll be good to go.
So after that initial test fit and reassuring myself, I moved on to just drilling a whole bunch of pocket holes to join everything together. So after I had all the pocket holes drilled, the next thing I had to do was move on to working out an access panel in the left-hand side of the cabinet so that we could get in and work on the plumbing in the future for the tub and shower unit. Here I'm just trying to work out where the floor is going to be in relationship to the hole that I'm actually going to cut, and I really did not know what the best method was going to be of actually cutting this thing out. It was at this point that I made an interesting discovery regarding my jigsaw.
Alright, so... Oh, that's awful. This cut is terrible. It's super terrible. I mean, like... When I say super terrible, I mean legitimately awful. Is it the blade? It might actually be the blade. It's not square. I thought it was me, but it might actually just be the jigsaw. Ugh. Trying to do fine woodworking without really knowing what you're doing. It's a treat, that's for sure.
So after a quick trip to the hardware store for a flush trim bit, I went ahead and made myself a rectangular template that I could follow to trim up the opening and get everything looking decent. I'm not exactly sure why I started on that side of the table, where I couldn't even see what I was doing. But eventually I came to my senses and came around to the other side so I could actually see what was going on. With the hole successfully cut out, I moved on to creating the panel that would actually go on the inside of that. And because my jigsaw had left such a horrible cut, there was no way that I could use the cutout from my original cut as the panel. I had to cut this out of a fresh piece of plywood. Once I got the panel to an acceptable fit with the length and width of it, then I just had to round the corners so that it would fit inside the hole, just like the rounded edge that the router bit had left. I ended up getting a pretty nice fit. By this point, I was getting really close to actually assembling the thing, but I just needed to figure out exactly how I was going to keep the access panel in place And so what I ultimately decided to do was get some fairly large washers and some small magnets so that I could embed the magnets in the back of the panel itself and put the washer on the top and bottom side of where the panel would fit into the whole wall section.
Okay, so I got this stood up now just to show kind of what I ended up doing. So I had salvaged a bunch of these little like magnetic receiver things from some old cabinets, and so I put one of those in the top just to sort of serve as a tab. I've got my magnets put into the back. I tried to get them out and they're actually stuck in there, so the press fit is almost too much for me to overcome. So I can't get them back out to put them in even if I want to. And then down here I put in just two screws, and I thought that if I just put the screws in, I can use those to sort of get my depth for the right amount of gap that I want. And it's just me being kind of OCD, but I wanted the gap to be somewhat consistent. So anyway, so if I put this in there using the screws, it slips into place, and you can adjust it a little bit. But I've got a small gap here, and there's a little bit of a bigger gap along the sides depending on how you push it in there. It's not 100% straight, which is kind of annoying, but you know, for a first time, it's not too bad. And you grab the little pull thing there, and you need a little bit to overcome that magnet, but it does come right out of there. So then you've got your access into the wall to work on the plumbing.
After all of that, it was finally time to start assembling everything. Okay, so here's where we're going to leave off the project for now. When we come back next time, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the face frame and maybe some of the drawer fronts and doors and things like that. But overall, I was pretty happy with how everything came together. If I had to do it over again and I had the right setup, I think I would prefer to do dados instead of just butt joints for those inner panels. But I think overall it came together pretty well, and I'm pretty proud of the progress so far. If you want to see more of this project, please subscribe to my channel and maybe hit the like button if you don't mind. Alright, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.